All right, so when a marriage falls apart, who do you think is usually the one to pull the plug? I bet the answer is going to surprise you, and it tells us something huge about relationships today. Let's dive in.
Okay, get this. 69%. According to a major study highlighted by the American Sociological Association, that's how many divorces are initiated by women. And, this isn't some new thing. The data shows it's been this way since the 1940s. So yeah, more than 2/3 of the time, it's the woman who says, "I'm done."
But that just raises a massive question, right? Why? I mean, it seems kind of counterintuitive. After a divorce, women often get hit harder financially, and they're usually the ones with the primary, if not sole, responsibility for the kids. So with all that on the line, what on earth is going on here?
And this is what researchers have dubbed the divorce paradox. Why would the very people who often face the biggest downsides of divorce be the ones leading the charge? It's this central puzzle of modern marriage that we really need to dig into.
Okay, so this really starts to paint the picture. For men, the data is pretty clear. Getting married is generally a big win. It's linked to better health, a better career, even a longer life. But for women, well, it's a lot murkier. In fact, some studies show that unmarried women actually report being happier than their married friends. Kinda wild, right?
So with that huge difference in experience, let's get into the nitty-gritty. What are the big reasons women are choosing to walk away? What's really going on behind closed doors?
All right, there's this really interesting concept that helps explain a lot of this. It's called evolutionary mismatch. Basically, it means that the stuff we evolved to want and need over thousands of years, well, it doesn't always line up with the world we live in today. And believe me, this mismatch is causing some serious sparks to fly in modern marriages.
Think about it. For most of human history, the deal was pretty simple. Women were often dependent on men for basic survival. Food, shelter, you name it. But fast forward to today, it's a whole new ballgame. Women are earning way more college degrees and now make up more than half of the paid workforce. That old dynamic of dependency, it's been totally flipped on its head.
And this quote from Science Direct just hits the nail on the head. So there's this evolved preference for women to seek partners with high status or resources. But what happens when women themselves become incredibly successful? Well, the pool of men who are more successful than them starts to shrink fast, and that can create a kind of dissatisfaction that's pretty new to our species.
And it's not just a theory. Check out this data from a big Swedish study. They looked at what happens when someone gets a massive career boost, like becoming a CEO or a top politician. For women who reach those heights, their chances of staying married took a nosedive. But for the guys who achieved the exact same thing, their marriages were just fine. It's pretty clear. A woman's success can rock the boat in a way a man's success just doesn't.
Oh, and it gets even messier, because on top of all the career pressure, there's what sociologists call the second shift. You know what I'm talking about? The research is overwhelming. Even when women are the main breadwinners, they still end up doing most of the housework and childcare. So you're working all day, then you come home to another full-time job. It's no wonder marriage can start to feel less like a partnership and more like, well, just a ton of work.
Okay, so let's flip this around. We've talked about why women might leave, but why are men, even if they're miserable, so much less likely to initiate the split?
Well, psychology today points to 4 main reasons men tend to stay put. 1, they're really tied to their kids and the idea of home. 2, they're scared of losing stability. 3, a lot of guys are just conditioned to suck it up and not talk about their feelings. And 4, they often don't have the same kind of support networks that women do.
Let's talk about that connection to the kids, because it's a huge one. For a lot of dads, home is defined by their children being there. The noise, the routines, everything. So there's this deep, nagging fear that if they leave, the house will be empty, and they'll become a weekend dad, a secondary parent. That's a powerful reason to stay. And then there's just the sheer terror of starting over from scratch. We're talking financial chaos, the potential for crushing loneliness, and your entire life's routine just gone. Plus, men can get really caught up in what's called the sunk cost fallacy. This idea that, man, I've put so many years into this, I can't just throw it all away now, even if it's not working. There's also this whole emotional conditioning thing. A lot of guys are just raised to bottle things up, to not show vulnerability. So they might be deeply, deeply unhappy, but they just tell themselves, this is just part of life. This is what marriage is. And when you can't even admit to yourself how you feel, let alone say it out loud, you can get stuck for a long, long time.
So when you step back and look at all of this together, a really interesting picture starts to form. Maybe this isn't really about men versus women at all. Maybe it's about an ancient institution, marriage, that's struggling to keep pace with our super fast-moving modern world. So let's circle back to that first number we talked about. Inside a marriage, it's women who file for divorce more than 2/3 of the time. That is a huge gender gap.
But, and this might be the most important slide of them all, look what happens when you take marriage out of the equation. For couples who are just dating or living together, who initiates the breakup? It's split almost perfectly 50-50. It's completely equal. This is what leads experts like Stanford sociologist Michael Rosenfeld to a pretty stunning conclusion. The problem isn't men and women in relationships. The problem seems to be the institution of marriage itself. As he puts it, marriage is carrying around a lot of historical baggage, and it's just been really, really slow to catch up with our modern expectations of what equality should look like.
So, what do we do with all this? If the institution itself is the source of so much of this friction, how can we possibly update it for the 21st century?
Well, the researchers looking into this have a few ideas. For starters, we can actively work to break down those old-school gendered ideas about who does what around the house. More support for things like childcare would be a massive help to ease that second shift burden. On a personal level, couples can make super explicit agreements about who handles what. And maybe most importantly, we can all get a little smarter about our own psychology. Recognize when our old caveman brains are causing problems in our modern relationships.
And all of this really leaves us with one big final question. The role of women in society has changed more in the last 100 years than in the 1,000 years before that. They're more educated, more powerful, and more independent than ever. The real challenge now is, can our oldest social institution, marriage, actually evolve fast enough to keep up with modern love?